He beat 4 other Republicans to get the GOP nomination for governor. Now what? Jack Ciattarelli, how are you going to beat Mikie Sherrill?
Oh, we're going to take our message to all the people of New Jersey. There's all kinds of crises raging throughout our state. Phil Murphy's tenure has been a failure. She supported every one of his policies. We're going to remind people of that.
So, in other words, we're going to hear Phil Murphy a lot during this campaign.
Well, she's Phil Murphy 2.0. And she has supported his failed policies. I think that's fair game.
What policies have failed?
We've got an affordability crisis in New Jersey. Our individuals and our businesses pay the highest overall taxes in the nation. I can fix that by reducing the size and cost of our state government. We have a public safety crisis across New Jersey. Nonviolent crime is through the roof, and look at the flash mobs on our Jersey shore, particularly over the Memorial Day weekend. Public education crisis in the state. We just slipped from 2 to 12 on the national report card because he shut us down for 2 years during the pandemic and hasn't put programs in place to make up for that learning loss. Overdevelopment, our suburbs, it's across the board, Marcia.
So you basically say that she's been out of touch and out of focus by being in Washington and not knowing what Jersey problems are?
I agree with you 100%, and she has supported Phil Murphy's policies, as well as Joe Biden's open border policies. She's for sanctuary cities, and us being a sanctuary state, I'll reverse that on day one.
How can you reverse sanctuary cities? You have to get the legislature to go along with you, no?
Not on that one. By executive order, I can reverse the immigrant trust directive that tells our local police not to do certain things. My job is to keep the state safe, and that's exactly what we're going to do.
So she's going to say the T word, Trump, and she's going to say, if you talk about sanctuary cities and reversing it, that you're following the policies of the President of the United States.
She's going to say Trump more than once. In fact, in my acceptance speech the other night, what I said was, if this was a drinking game and you took a shot every time she says Trump, you'll be drunk every day between now and Election Day.
But so she called you in her election speech a Trump lackey. How did you feel about that? Do you feel that that's correct? It's not correct? And how are you going to respond to it? Because she's going to use that day in and day out as well.
Let me tell you why I feel really good about that. When the other side is calling you names, it means they're worried and we're winning.
But how do you deal with that? I mean, people believe that you, one of the reasons you won, not all of the reasons, because you did really well the last time you ran, but was Trump's endorsement was a help. So how are you going to deal with that as you go towards November? Most people think that, like, when you win a primary, you have to go to the right, but then you come to the middle in the general election. What is Jack Ciattarelli going to do?
First of all, in the primary, I didn't tack right, I didn't tack left, I didn't tack center, I tacked New Jersey. But here are the facts. Donald Trump got 500,000 more votes than Phil Murphy did in the last gubernatorial and presidential election combined. He's polling 7 points ahead of Governor Murphy in this supposedly deep blue state of New Jersey, and he's taken policy positions that are overwhelmingly received well by New Jerseyans. What are they? Stop the wind farms off the Jersey shore. He's beaten up on the New York Democrats over congestion pricing. He's willing to quadruple the SALT deduction on our federal tax returns. Can you imagine that? We're going to go from 10 to 40,000. That's important in a state that pays the highest property taxes in the nation.
Well, let's take which is one at a time. You talk about wind farms, right? The high cost of electricity in New Jersey is driving people crazy. How are you going to get rid of the wind farms and find a way to get more power so you can reduce the cost of power to people?
So this is one of the other policy failures of the Murphy administration that she has supported. Wind was never going to supply electricity we need. I'll lift the moratorium on natural gas-fired electricity generation plants. I'm going to expand our nuclear footprint in South Jersey. I'll expand our solar footprint, and we'll get the price of electricity down. In 2018, when Murphy took office, New Jersey was an electricity exporter. Today we're an importer. And going through the exchanges, that's what's causing electricity to rise so significantly.
Why did that change in 8 years? I mean, what changed the fact that you couldn't export electricity anymore? More people, or? He
stopped with a diversified mix of electricity production. No natural gas, no nuclear, wasn't cooperative on solar. He bet it all on wind, which has crashed and burned. And my opponent supported him on that.
But why did wind crash and burn? It was regarded as so much a popular thing at the time.
A couple of things. One, it's a very interest rate sensitive industry. And when interest rates went from 2 to 7 and they wanted more government subsidies, I don't like when an industry is dependent on government subsidies in order to survive.
But one of the things that, that's going on in the country right now is what's going on in Los Angeles and the fact that he has federalized the National Guard. What would you do if he said, I'm going to bring the National Guard into New Jersey if you were governor?
Hey, we could use all the help we can get to stop anything from Los Angeles happening here in New Jersey. But guess what? On a much smaller scale, it did happen over the Memorial Day weekend. In one particular town, 101 arrests. stabbings, chaos, violence, flash mobs. We now have curfews on our Jersey Shore. If you're a business owner, you've only got 3 months out of the year to make your money, and now we're shutting you down 2 hours early every single night. How would you like that?
So you would welcome the National Guard? I mean, you know, there's been instances that have gone on in Newark at Delaney Hall. Would you bring the National Guard in to deal with that? There was a riot just this week.
I would be in constant contact with our local police, our county sheriffs, and the state police. Let's bring all of our law enforcement agencies together. Do you need help in order to stop, for example, these flash mobs? And there's going to be protests across the state this weekend, and I've called for them to be peaceful. But the governor needs to be ready.
So as governor, would you have the National Guard on standby?
You bet I would.
Would you call on other police jurisdictions under mutual aid to come into wherever you think there's going to be protests?
100%. In order to prevent what's happening in L.A. from happening in New Jersey, you bet, particularly along our Jersey Shore during the summer months.
But these protesters seem to feel that they're empowered to do what they're doing. How would you try to negotiate with them? Would you try to stop them? I mean, how do you deal with it?
You have a right to feel however you want. You actually have a right to peacefully protest. What we're not going to have is lawlessness.
But so there's a problem in New Jersey because New Jersey, of every person in New Jersey, 1 out of every 4 New Jerseyans are immigrants. So how do you make them feel welcome and a part of the economy and a part of life in New Jersey when you want to, you know, end sanctuary cities and you want to crack down on protests that have to do with immigration?
Legal immigrants are more than welcome. Donald Trump ran on this campaign promise: I'm going to make our country safe again. He won all 7 swing states. He won the popular vote, the Electoral College, the House and the Senate. And illegal crossings at the border are down 99%. I have a job to keep New Jersey safe. And encouraging illegal immigration by having sanctuary cities and a sanctuary state is something that New Jerseyans overwhelmingly do not want.
But see, one of the things that Trump has been saying over the last several days is there might have been an overreaction to deporting immigrants because it's affecting the farm industry and it's affecting the hospitality industry. And New Jersey is known as the Garden State. So there's a lot of farms there that depend on migrants to do the labor. So do you think that there needs to be a retrenchment, a move back, so people who are on these farms and doing the work don't feel they have to flee?
So let's think about this. In his first term, he offered to extend DACA, deferred action, to illegals. And also, when recently asked in a TV interview, what do you do about people that have been here for 10 or 20 years, have been part of the workforce and haven't committed any crimes? And what he said was, it's difficult. It is difficult. But let's be clear. Those that came here with a criminal background from their country of origin need to go back. And those that came here illegally and committed a crime once here need to go back, unless they're not going to be incarcerated upon return. We should incarcerate them.
But you see, you also have a situation where the ICE agents have been turning up at courthouses where people are responding to their regular court hearings and they're being arrested and they're complying with the law. How do you feel about that?
If they're responding to a court hearing, aren't they doing that because they committed a crime?
No, they're responding to a court hearing because they're going through the process of getting their green cards and being legal.
Well, certainly applying for a green card is a process we have here. Work visas, people from other states, student visas, we're all for that.
So you would not say to President Trump, don't make these arrests at courthouses?
No, what I will say is I'm going to work in partnership with the president to keep our communities safe. And my attorney general will not be suing the White House over any executive orders that are designed to keep our country and our state safe. I really believe that every one of our governors, no matter what their party affiliation, should be working in partnership with the president to make our country safe again.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it right there for now. But up next, we'll be talking housing, rent hikes, and homelessness with Christine Quinn. We are back with Jack Ciattarelli. So a former governor of New Jersey, a Republican governor of New Jersey, Christie Todd Whitman, has decided to endorse Mikie Sherrill, your opponent. I wonder your reaction to that and if you think it's going to affect the race.
She hates the president and extends that hate to any Republican that doesn't share that hate.
So do you think, though, that it's going to be a feather in Mikie Sherrill's cap?
I don't. I can't tell you, as I go around the state of New Jersey, I can't tell you how many Democrats come up to me and say, Jack, we've had it. We're voting Republican this year.
You know, a lot of people that I've run into are saying that they've had it as well. But what do you think that taps into?
They're angry over a number of things in New Jersey. There's an affordability crisis. There's a public safety crisis. There's a public education crisis. There's an overdevelopment crisis. There's an energy crisis that's driving up monthly electric bills. And they don't want sanctuary cities in New Jersey, nor do they want us to be a sanctuary state.
So how do you deal with the affordability crisis? I know you've talked about, reducing taxes, but how much can you reduce taxes if it's going to cut into the money you can spend on programs?
I can reduce property taxes with a new school funding formula. We need a more equitable distribution of state aid to our school districts. That lowers the local levy. I can lower income taxes for individuals and businesses by reducing the size and cost of our state government. Phil Murphy's up $22 billion in 8 years' time. It's a bloated, inefficient state government. I'll be very responsible about the way we go about it, but it needs to be reduced.
But, when people look at what happened in Washington with DOGE, there were a number of things that were cut that weren't good ideas. For example, the funding for the 9/11 health care fund. So how do you make sure that you do these cuts without hurting the programs that New Jersey needs?
I'll be very surgical in the way we go about it, but this state government needs to be downsized. And by the way, in New Jersey, we already have a DOGE. There's a committee for state investigations that's part of state government, whose job it is to identify fraud. And we have a state comptroller whose job it is to eliminate waste and inefficiency.
But apparently they haven't done that.
Not under Phil Murphy, they haven't, but they will under Governor Ciattarelli.
So what do you do if you were governor in terms of property taxes? How much can you actually reduce them?
We can reduce them significantly with a new school funding formula. $15 billion in state aid goes out to 600 school districts, and 50% of that aid goes to only 24 districts.
But would you still keep the $15 billion, just redistribute it, or is there a way to reduce the local property tax?
By state constitution, I have to. The income tax in New Jersey can be used for one thing and one thing only: state aid to schools.
So how do you reduce local property taxes, which go towards schools, if you have to keep spending $15 billion?
If your district gets very little aid from Trenton, but I send you more aid, that's less that you have to tax the locals to pay for the school district. We're going to send you more aid.
So let's talk about your plan to reduce the corporate business tax. You want to do it a point a year, 1% a year for 5 years, which is obviously laudable, but then that cuts the money that you get in the coffers in Trenton. So
not necessarily. If my reforms grow the private sector and create more jobs, we'll make up for it. And by the way, Pennsylvania is lowering its business tax from 10 to 5%, 1% a year over a 5-year period. If Pennsylvania can do it, why can't we?
Well, are you at least are you worried that people from New Jersey, especially southern New Jersey, are going to move to Pennsylvania because the taxes are lower?
Marcia, they've been doing that for years. Our highest tax bracket is 11%. The highest personal income tax bracket in Pennsylvania, 3%.
So are there other taxes that you're thinking of reducing? Like, you pick it.
Listen, the big three are property tax, personal income taxes, business taxes. We can reduce all three very responsibly, and we need to grow our economy. Phil Murphy's trying to tax his way out of the problems he's created. I'm going to reduce the size and cost, but I can't cut our way out entirely. We've got to grow our economy. And being ranked the worst place in the country in which to do business, that ain't going to happen. Certainly not under Mikie Sherrill. She's Phil Murphy 2.0.
So let's talk about affordable housing. One of the planks of her campaign has been that she's going to build affordable housing. How would you do it? I mean, do you believe that New Jersey needs more housing when you talk about overdevelopment in some communities? So how do you deal with it?
Absolutely, we need more affordable housing, but we need to be smart about where we put it. Transit hubs, those are towns that have a train station, a bus line, infrastructure, jobs, and we have to do that on a much larger scale in places like Newark, Trenton, and Atlantic City. We got to get people to live in our cities again. If you build compelling housing, provide safe communities, good public education, recreational opportunities, the people will come.
So basically what you're doing is taking a look at the places where NJ Transit, a favorite of people who live in New Jersey, by the way, stopped, that you would build major complexes around them, and is there the land to do it?
I'll answer your question this way. I recently gave a talk in Atlantic City. 100 years ago, 1925, the population of Atlantic City was 52,000. Today, it's 35,000.
What happened?
You know what happened. We ignored our cities. But what would 17,000 more people mean to the local economy in Atlantic City? 50% of our state budget supports only 12 towns around our state because they're so dependent on state aid because they're plagued by blight. I've got to eliminate the blight and make them livable cities again. Our suburbs are magnificent, but suburbs are not the engines of economic growth. Thriving, vibrant cities are the engines of economic growth.
How do you attract businesses there?
Well, you got to change regulations and the tax structure. When Pennsylvania is lowering their business tax from 10 to 5, the Trenton Democrats, with the support of Mikie Sherrill, increased ours to 11.5, the highest in the nation. We're going in the opposite direction of Pennsylvania, and they're eating our lunch. We're going to compete under Governor Ciattarelli.
But see, here's the thing. You know, Phil Murphy, as governor of New Jersey, was trying to say that when congestion pricing went into effect, he was going to get New York businesses to come to New Jersey. But so far, I don't think we've seen anything like that. So how are you going to attract businesses? And are you going to try to poach New York businesses, or are you going to try to create your own?
So what businesses look at are taxes, regulations, labor pool, and energy. And New Jersey's starting to suck wind in all four. We can fix all those things, and we've talked about that. But let me say something about that congestion pricing plan. That's an egregious money grab. Fixing the New York subway system on the backs of New Jerseyans, we need a retaliatory tactic. Here's mine. Any New York plate that comes through the tunnels or over the bridge in the morning into New Jersey, I'm going to hit them with a congestion pricing fee, and we'll fix New Jersey transit. But
there are other license plates that come to New Jersey besides New York. I mean, people you know travel, for example, from every place through the Jersey Turnpike and the Parkway to other places. So you're only going to tax New York license plates? What about people who come from Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Maine, other places?
Listen, we'll replicate the New York model. I don't know what they're doing with other license plates, but I do know the vast majority of the congestion pricing fees, revenue, is coming from New Jerseyans.
What are you going to do about NJ Transit?
We got to start.
People say it's terrible.
It is terrible. We need to start from the ground up and hit the reset button. That means that every single route, every single train and bus route needs to be reevaluated.
But where do you get the money for that? I mean,
Marcia, we're putting $2 billion a year into New Jersey Transit.
But it hasn't helped.
Well, I think that has a lot to do with the management. But a new governor gets to hit the reset button, and we'll do that. But I'm also going to create the Garden State Transportation Authority and put all of our mass transit systems under one roof, one management structure. Right now, I got the Atlantic City Expressway over here. I got New Jersey Transit over here. I got the Parkway and Turnpike over here. They're all managed by 3 different authorities. Put them all under one roof.
What about the gas tax?
That's where the gas tax revenue should go. Gas tax revenues are meant to support the mass transit systems and the infrastructure.
Good luck with getting the democratically controlled legislature in Trenton to go along with that.
Wait a second, Marcia. I'm going to produce a Republican majority in the state assembly. In 21, I flipped 8 seats in the state legislature with wind in my face. I've got some wind at my back this time. We could flip at least 13 seats. That's a new majority.
So speaking of the legislature, you favor term limits.
I do. For legislators.
They're not going to like that.
Well, listen. We'll grandfather the current ones in, but we do need a change. New ideas.
But did you have to do a constitutional amendment in order to do that?
We may very well have to do that. You know, I don't have a problem with INR. Let's put it on the ballot.
But do you think...
You don't think people would overwhelmingly support term limits?
Well, it's 8 years. You know, you're going to get a lot of those people who are going to say, how many people in the legislature have served more than 8 years now? Probably half of them.
And guess what? Look where we are today. The worst state in the country to do business. The worst state in the country in which to retire. The highest property taxes in the nation. Slipping on the national report card in our K-12 system. Overdevelopment. Electricity going through the rates. Maybe we need some changes in the legislature.
How about taxing pension funds?
I think we should do what Pennsylvania does. In Pennsylvania, all retirement income is tax-free. That's in my platform. We'll do the same thing in New Jersey.
Just Social Security wouldn't be taxed?
All retirement income tax-free. The only thing to be taxable are your W-2 wages.
Seriously?
Seriously. Pennsylvania does it. Why not us?
How much money will you lose with all of these things? You know, you have to run government. There's certain services, including education and transit, all these things you want money for.
Well, I'll answer the question with a question. How is it Pennsylvania can do it and we can't?
I don't know the answer to that.
If they can do it, so can we.
But aren't you afraid that the legislature isn't going to go along with these radical ideas, that they're going to say your ideas are radical, that they're not going to want to go along with it because they believe that what they've done so far has been right?
If anyone suggests that making all retirement income tax-free in a state that's the worst in the country in which to retire, I welcome that debate.
So New Jersey is unusual in that it has basically a 3-party system. You've got Democrats, Republicans, and a lot of independents.
And they dictate the outcomes of statewide elections. And know this about the 2.6 million.
So how do you appeal to independent voters?
They are socially moderate, they're fiscally conservative, and I'm telling you, they've had it.
Yeah, but they're socially moderate. How are you going to convince them that you are going to be moderate too when you have, you know, your abortion plans are not going to be something that they...
I've got a very strong libertarian streak, Marcia. Libertarians do not like government involved in deeply personal decisions. I'm all about making New Jersey a better place to get an education, get the job of your dreams, start a business, raise a family, retire. Those are economic issues.
So you think that you can appeal to the independent voter by talking about your fiscal policies?
So I've won 2 races at the municipal level, two races at the county level, and 3 two-year terms in the state legislature, always term limiting myself. And that's in a town, a county, and a legislative district where Democrats outnumbered Republicans, sometimes significantly. How did I win those races?
So she's going to say, as we've talked about, that you're tied to Donald Trump.
Of course she is.
She's going to talk about some of his policies, like cutting Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. How do you counter that? And how do you counter her litany of Trump, Trump, Trump? I mean, really.
Couple of ways.
You need to do that in order to get the Republicans into your camp.
Couple of ways. The best way to save Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security is by eliminating the fraud, and that's exactly what the White House is trying to do. Second of all, why is it you keep talking about federal issues when we've got all these crises raging all throughout New Jersey? You know why? Because you supported the Phil Murphy agenda. You don't want to talk about Phil Murphy's record because you supported it every step of the way. We're not going to let the people in New Jersey forget that. We're not going to let them forget that this is a race about New Jersey, and our governor has a huge impact on people's quality of life here.
If I were to say to you, rate the job that Phil Murphy has done over the last 8 years. F?
F.
Hasn't done anything good?
Marcia, look what's happened in 8 years. I've gone through it a number of times. The worst property taxes, worst place to retire, worst place to do business. Your electricity rates are going through the roof. We slipped from 2 to 12 on national report cards. Flash mobs on our Jersey shore because they've handcuffed our local police. Tell me where he's excelled. New Jersey Transit, are we any better off in any area than we were 8 years ago?
You know,
Wait, I found one.
What's that?
With all those problems, we can go home and get high. He approved recreational marijuana. Come on.
But the problems that you outlined, you know, if you take a look around at the surrounding states, New York, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, other places in the metropolitan area, they have the same problems that New Jersey does.
Not true. The Democratic governor of Pennsylvania is burning 7 coal-burning plants to produce electricity. He's burning natural gas like there's no tomorrow. He's getting the data centers that are needed to support AI, producing economic development opportunities for his people. He's a Democrat, Marcia. He's a Democrat. You don't see him handcuffing police in Pennsylvania.
So are you talking...
Leadership matters.
Would you go into coal-burning plants?
Phil Murphy shut down our last. So I'm all about natural gas. Natural gas is a rational transition or bridge to the future. And
where do you get it?
There's plenty of natural gas out there.
Don't you have to build a pipeline?
Sure. But I'll tell you what, right now when people are looking at their monthly electric bills, you know what they're crying out for?
Change.
Change. And guess what? We've got 3 nuclear power plants in South Jersey that have provided living for generations of people. We've got footprints for others. I'll expand our nuclear footprint in South Jersey.
Do you need more nuclear power plants in New Jersey?
Absolutely, we do.
Will you have
to meet the demands of the future and provide the opportunity provided by the data centers that are needed for AI and cryptocurrency. We've got to provide the juice.
So how do you cite them when, you know, there's been a lot of animosity towards citing nuclear power plants? People are afraid of them.
I think there's greater animosity toward your monthly electric bill right now.
I myself can say that you're probably right.
Hey, I was with a small manufacturer the other day. His monthly electric bill went from $17,000 to $20,000 a month. That's $36,000 a year.
Okay, so here's my last question. Tell people in New Jersey why they should vote for you and not Mikie Sherrill.
Actually, the Ciattarellis have been here for 100 years. She can't say that. I've lived my whole life here. I don't want to be president, don't want to be U.S. Senator, and I have very specific ideas to address the crises that we talked about here today. She's Phil Murphy 2.0. She's endorsed every one of his policies and will continue with every one of them. Ask her if she has any disagreement with Phil Murphy's policies.
Jack Ciattarelli, I think we're going to have you back again, and we're going to be asking those questions of Mikie Sherrill, too. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
And thank you at home for joining us as well.